Good morning or afternoon or evening, depending on where you are right now. This is Nancy L.T. Hamilton, and today we are going to do a little wedding band, or not wedding band. So your husband's too cheap to buy you one, you can make your own, or give it to him. This is basically a ring. Basically a ring. It's just a regular plain band that we're going to dome and make into this fabulous piece. I'm also going to make this a two-part because the second part we're going to talk about putting a pre-made faceted stone setting on it. So today we're just going to talk about how to make this ring. Okay? And then we will talk about tools and everything else. It'll be so exciting. One of the things that you're definitely going to need for this project is this ring blank sizing chart that's on my website under charts. It tells you, it lists the gauge of the metal you're working with and what size in millimeters that you should cut the blank at. So that's important. We're also going to need some kind of hammer that doesn't mar, like this is a leather mallet. You can use a nylon. This is a polyurethane, I believe. I can't remember exactly, but then you're going to need measuring tools, always the ruler with millimeters, and compass here, and a triangle if you have one that has a 90-degree angle. Metal, this I'm using 22 gauge for this. You can use 20, 18. I wouldn't get too much thicker. It'd be too tough to dome this ring. And then since I'm using 22 gauge metal, I'm going to use 22 gauge wire to size it. This will be determining what ring size you are. Wire cutters to cut the wire. Then this is a tube cutting jig, and this is a miter cutting jig. This is for cleaning up our edges. You don't have to have this. I have a video on how to make clean edges. And there will be a link there. And this is just, I'm going to show you a little trick on how to cut your ring stock with. Files, these are both bastard files. One has a double cut here, so it goes this way and this way. This is a rougher one. And this one I think is a number 2, one directional file. So first this, then that to smooth down. A ring mandrel with sizing on it. You can see all the ring sizes. This one does it in 1/8 of the sizes. And a pair of flat nose pliers. And you will need to have at least one doming punch. And this is a set from Harbor Freight. It's, I think, like $25, $26, maybe $30 now. I don't know. And it's a perfectly good set. And you'll need, if you're using the doming punches, you'll need a vise to hold it in. There's also another tool this one costs 75 buckaroonies, and what is it called? I wrote it down somewhere. It is the Bonnie Doon Synclastic Anti-Clastic Forming Stake. And we'll be working with this little roundy end here on this. So I'm going to demo on this though. So that's what we need for tools and materials, and we're going to get started on the project. So now we're going to figure out, if you don't know what ring size you have, you should cut the wire, and I like to wrap it around the knuckle because it's firmer, for one thing, than the soft part of your finger, and the wire doesn't sink in. Also, when you wrap this, make it a little loose, not terribly loose, but a little. Because when you twist it down, it's going to tighten up. You want to be able to get this off your finger. Put a bunch of twists in it because it does like to come undone. That's kind of tight on me, but I'll stretch it out over here. So, and then what you want to do is take your ring mandrel and push this up on it as far as you can get it. This is at 7 3/4 size at this point. And I'm going to add a 1/4 for comfort, so I'm going to make it an 8. So that's how we determine the ring size. If you don't have a mandrel, you can cut this open and measure this distance from here to here, and then go check it on the chart over here after you add an 1/8 of a size to it. But you're going to need a ring mandrel. Anyway, you should get one. If you're going to make rings, get a ring mandrel, okay? So anyway, we're going to go on to the next part. sizing the ring blank and drawing the pattern on the metal. So if you want to make this ring that looks exactly the same, this is 10 millimeters wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my compass to 10 millimeters, and I don't put it exactly on these lines here. I put it just a little hair outside of the line. One of the reasons is it's a lot easier to have it too big than it is too little. And this also takes into account that I'm putting it on the edge here. I'm not putting it right on the line, I'm putting it on the side of it. So once you get your 10 millimeters set on your compass, you're going to take it and drag it down by pushing this one leg up against the metal and letting the other one dig into the metal. And there's your 10 millimeter wide band. Now, since I'm using a shear on this, I want to be able to see the line better, so I always draw in with the Sharpie another line. Oh, so that's that part, and that was pretty easy. So now I'm just going to cut this with the shear. You can look at my video on square edge if you want to learn a little bit more on how to do this. So I'm going to do that, and we'll be right back with you. So here's my cut piece. You want to make sure that you didn't cut it crooked, and if you use hand shears, you're definitely going to need to clean the edge up and straighten it so that everything is the same length all the way down the whole piece. We also need, what we're going to do with this is we're going to mark how long we need to make this, and we need to have two beautifully square and flat edges also. So I'm going to show you how to do that after I mark this. So with file in hand, bastard file, and I have my miter cutting jig. I've got the metal in here. We have in the video on how to square edges, talks about using this tool. There's other methods, please see that video. Right now we need to make sure that our end is nice and square and true, so I'm going to take care of that. For half a hair, I'm using 2 files so that I can not have too rough an edge on this. Okay, so that's ready. So now we have 2 square edges, and we will go ahead and mark our, this says 62.2 millimeters. I'm going to round it up to 62.5 because you saw we took a little material off there. We're going to end up doing that on the other end too. So we're going to just always make it a little tiny bit bigger. We can adjust if it's too big later on. So I'm going to measure it and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've marked my 62.5. 62.5 millimeters on here, and I want to show you this. We're going to use this again. You take your really perfectly flat edge here, put it down, and I'm doing this backwards so it's hard for me to see, and then make sure everything is squished down and line your triangle up with your dots and go ahead and run your line. What this does is it gives you a straight line, so you don't start off with a crooked end on here. We need these ends to be really beautifully flat. Now there's this little trick here. You can use your tube cutting jig to saw your ring blank form by opening it up and lining up your line with the groove in the ring tube cutting jig. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to turn it around because I need to see what I'm doing. You people just have to wait a second. Okay. Let me get this in there, line it up, tighten it down. Okay. Alright, so at this point you can go ahead and saw it out using this, and these little slices here that are cut into here will keep your blade true, so you cut a really nice line. So we're going to go ahead and saw this out, and I'm going to square the final squaring with this, my miter cutting jig, and I'm going to show you the next step. Key. You know, I realized that I did you a disservice by not actually explaining this a little more, how to use this ring cutting vise here. I don't know what version you have, but this one has a little screw, knurled screw thing that you can pull this end off. Since this ring blank, the part where the ring is, wouldn't fit in here to cut it. See, it's past where that block used to be. So I had to take it off. If you do it, the other issue is that your square edge would, if you left the piece on like this edge isn't squared yet, so it's not going to line up straight. So I just take this off. I would start your saw mark here, so you know, bring it in at an angle and drag down to start it, and then place it in the vise, lining up your let's see if I can get over here. You're going to line up your mark with the groove in the vise and lay it towards you, so it looks like that when you saw it, because it's going to be nutty to try to saw it on the back side over here. So just pull it over, line up your lines, and then once you've got your little starter hole, and just go ahead and put your blade in. Sorry, my producer hates my guts. I'm sure I'm constantly wiggling all over the place. And just line up your lines and your blade in here, and eventually you'll get through the back one from sawing through this once you get down a little farther in the sawing. So I hope that helps a little bit. This bar can come in to help hold the metal down. But that's going to help you saw a straight line, or you can just freehand it. You don't have to use this at all, but this is just another trick for pulling out a straight edge. I'm also double checking by using the using my little thing that I forgot the name of every other minute. So so we're going to go on to the next step now. I think I've babbled long enough. And now what we're going to do is we're going to round our little blank. I'm going to round it. This is a 9.5. I'm going to round it up around 8.5. And I'm going to start with one side, and then I'm going to rotate over to the other side. And remember, because this is a conical shape, you have to keep rotating it back and forth, switching sides when you hammer, otherwise it's going to end up a little off. But this metal is so thin that it's going to be pretty easy to fix. It's not a huge deal, but when you're working in like 18 gauge or 16 gauge, you're going to be weeping. So we're just going to go around, and now let's see, we're going to slide this down here, open up a little bit. Okay, so now we don't care if it's perfectly round at this point. We really just don't care, because we're actually going to flatten this edge down somewhat. The first thing I'm going to do is try to find my pliers that I lost. There we go. Get rid of this. Get rid of this. Clutter, 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 clutter. Okay, I'm going to take the pliers. You can either use pliers, or you can actually use a little flat vise. Not vise, that's the wrong word. Anvil. And hammer this flat. But right now I'm just going to use these pliers to flatten it out. And you'll notice that this one is not quite the same thickness on both sides. I'm going to deal with that later. Right now I'm going to just settle on one side. And I'm going to make sure that this metal is flat, because it really isn't real flat. Okay, so once you get it close, then you're going to start doing this spring action thing, where you're going to push it past over the top or the bottom and line it up. You want it springy because you want it to hold itself together. This is just angled wrong. And then you also want to make sure that the levels are the same, that the left side and the right side are at the same level. Otherwise, if you solder it, it'll end up with one side higher than the other, and you will be feeling pretty silly. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to check it for light. I don't really want to see a lot of light coming through there, because solder likes to do a capillary action and flow through from side to side. It doesn't like to fill gaps. So I'm going to call this ready to solder at this point. The big deal here was to get your edges square. They're really important to have them nice and square, which is why I spend the extra time to do that. It makes putting this part together so much easier. So we're going to go solder this, and I will show you how to do that. One thing, if you're working with sterling silver on this project, I would go ahead and dip it in Prips Flux, and I have the recipe on my site how to make this. So that'll protect it from fire scale. Since I'm using copper, I don't care. So I'm going to hit it with a little flux along my seam. Oh, stand up, girl. It's along my seam line. I'm using my cross-lock tweezers here, and I'm just going to try to hold it by the very end of them. I don't really want a big heat sink on here. And I've already pre-cut some little pallions of hard solder. You want to do this seam in hard solder. It's a strong join, and it's your first join. Where'd that go? There we go. Get up here. Oh, for goodness sakes. Now, I'm using the paintbrush because I have flux on it, so I'm essentially fluxing my solder, which you want to do, by the way. Okay, fire. Get producer off hose. So, copper is filthy, dirty metal. Actually, normally I would have my fan on, and let me put my hair up because I don't want to catch on fire. I normally would have my fan on, but I don't want you to not hear what I'm saying because it's pretty loud, okay? So we're just going to watch me lose my lungs for a minute. But when you're at home, make sure you have a fan or an open window. Okay, I was saying, copper is a dirty metal. So I want to get in here and out fast. But first thing I want to do is heat this up, warm it up so that my solder pallions don't do what they just did. And also because copper is an excellent heat transfer, and you need to get it as warm as you can all over. So I'm going underneath right now, and see, it's already starting to get really dirty. So I want to see the solder's balling up. I want to get in here and really get this seam hot fast. Come on, girls, let's go. Down the seam, down the seam. Okay, I think we got it. There we go. If not, I can do it again, although I don't recommend it. You should try to get it in the first run. Oh, that looks pretty good. Woo! So I'm going to quench it, and then put it in my pickle, and in a minute we'll take it out and round it and clean the solder off. And then we're going to do the fun stuff. You need to round your ring up because it's easier to clean up your solder, and if you're not quite true on your band, this will also make it easier for you to sand it. So you just slide it onto your mandrel and round it back out again. Or round it out for the first time is the case, maybe. So I switched it, remember, because we do have a cone. So I'm going to start with my bastard file here, and I'm going to just hit my, I don't want to air file, hit my edge. Remember, files cut in one direction, the one going away, and then switch to the like the 2-cut file. And actually this would be a lot easier if I used my ring vise to hold this, but we can do it like this. So you're going to take this down until your solder is almost gone, and then come in with a sanding stick. Use I would start with 320 and then go to 400 and then a 600 for now, depending on the finish. And we're going to be doing a bunch of hammering on this, so it doesn't really matter too much at this point. Also, we want to clean up this edge, so once again we need to sand this down, and I would just drag it, putting more pressure on your high side than on the low side. And using this one will cut it quicker, the metal quicker, so that's why I'm using the double cut. And every once in a while check where you are. I still have a little lip here. You can also use the Wolf belt sander or even a side of a grinding wheel to take this down, whatever you use to remove metal. And then once again switch to the single cut bastard file. And your sandpaper, 324, 6, just like that. So basically that's that, and we'll end up with this regular band shape here, which we will be turning into the dome shape. So at this point the ring is annealed after the solder, so we can just go ahead and start the forming of the piece. So we'll do that next. So don't forget to finish the inside of your ring half round file first. Get in there, take that solder down. Remember, it only cuts in one direction, the push direction. And then you can buy these at the hardware store. They're little sanding drums, and they come in different grits. And they're really nice for doing the inside of a ring. Put them in a flex shaft or a Dremel, so you can finish the ring that way. You need to do it now, because after we dome this, it's going to be a bit harder to get in there. Not impossible, but harder. So go the easy route. Okay, so now we're going to take our finished ring shank, and we're going to start rounding process. I'm using the dapping punch here because most people have them. If you can get a vise that isn't as crappy as this one won't stop spinning no matter how hard I try to lock it down. So bear with me on that. So what the concept is we're going to be curling this edge around the ball of the dapping punch. By the way, make sure that your dapping punch is at least 3 millimeters smaller in diameter than this ring, otherwise it'll get stuck on there. Really? I know for a fact. So we're going to start by hammering this outer edge around the curve of the ball. Put your fingers out of the way, because you will whack them. And I don't know if you can see it yet, but it's starting to curve around the shape of the ball, which is exactly what we want. And in the process, it's shrinking the interior dimension of the ring, which is why we started with a size and a half to 2 sizes bigger. So honestly, I would make a test one before I did it in silver to see how big you need to make it, because you may need to make it 2 sizes bigger. Okay, so we've got our rounded edge here. Also, another point is that the harder you hammer, the strength of your hammer blows will also affect how much this thing curves. So if you're real heavy hammered, you'll get more of a bend on it, and the ring interior dimensions will be a little smaller than if you're a tapper. And don't forget, hold the hammer at the end of the hammer to get the most efficient use of it. So I'm going to turn this over and do the other side now. Okay, so we've got enough of a little curve on this. It's not quite true in there, but I'm going to go ahead and anneal this and do the second course to raise it even further up. Now you could literally stop at this point if you wanted to, or you can try to get more of an arc. You could probably pull it way up, but you have to remember it may not fit your finger. So you need every once in a while check the fit of the ring on the finger. And that's usually when you know when you're done. So I'm going to go in and solder, anneal, and I'll be right back. And I'm going to do my second course. I'm not going to make you watch this whole thing because it's kind of dull. But basically, you're just going to keep going around and around until you get the height that you want. And hammering this side of the ring. Since we're using these little dapping punches, the ring may not be as trued as you like it to be. So at that point, when you are done, also make sure you can still get this in and off and on the punch. If it starts to get tight, switch to a smaller one so you don't get stuck on here. So anyway, after you've reached the height you want, you can go ahead and bring it over to the ring mandrel and true it up on here. You can sometimes do that just by twisting it. Let's see if that worked. No. And you have to go back in there and tap around, trying to get this thing. You don't want to hit it on the top because you'll end up smashing your ring down. So just kind of tap it around the very, very edge. That's better. See, that's better on that side. More trued up. And flip it for the other side. And then, of course, check your fit. If it doesn't quite fit you, you will need to, if it's too tight, you can stretch it out on here by hammering, but if it's too loose, I would raise it even higher, do another course of annealing and hammering on here and truing if you need to. Another thing you can do, this will be our final bit on this, is that you can use hammers and put a texture on the ring on top of the ball end of the punch, and then put a little patterning on it. And see, I'm going over the top. And this actually is also altering the shape of it. So if you're going to do this before you're, make sure the ring's still a little big before you do this. Because this is actually going to shrink it a little more because we're actually raising it. Okay, that's enough. So there you can have that kind of pattern on the ring. So that is a very quick and hopefully efficient video on how to make a domed ring band. We covered a lot of subjects like ring sizing and cutting and squaring and blah blah blahing. So I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you come back again to see some of our next exciting videos, especially the second part of this where I'm going to put on a fabulous stone and have my diamond wedding ring that my husband didn't buy me. Okay, thanks for, I'm babbling again. Sorry. Thanks for coming. See you later. Bye. This is Nancy L.T. Hamilton signing off.